Promises in the storm. The rain fell in relentless sheets the night Ethan Miller proposed to Olivia James. They stood under the gazebo in West Side Park, where they'd first met during a charity run 4 years earlier. Raindrops pounded against the wooden roof as Ethan knelt on one knee, offering not just a diamond ring but a lifetime of promises. Through every storm, he vowed, his voice steady against the thunder, "I'll be your shelter." Olivia's eyes glistened as she accepted. At 26, she had found her forever in Ethan's warm brown eyes and gentle hands that always seemed to know when to hold hers. Their wedding was simple but meaningful, held in the botanical gardens where Olivia worked as a landscape architect. Friends often commented how perfectly they complemented each other, Ethan's methodical approach to his engineering career balanced by Olivia's creative spirit. 3 years into their marriage, they purchased a fixer-upper cottage on the outskirts of town. Weekends became filled with paint cans and renovation plans. Olivia's design skills transformed the space, while Ethan handled the structural work. The house became their shared canvas, each room holding memories of laughter and occasional, frustrated tears when projects didn't go as planned. "This is our forever home," Ethan would say, wrapping his arms around Olivia as they stood on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Ethan's career at Meridian Engineering took off, while Olivia's reputation in sustainable landscape design grew steadily. They talked about starting a family soon, sketching plans to convert the spare bedroom into a nursery. The morning of the accident began like any other Tuesday. Olivia kissed Ethan goodbye, her coffee cup leaving a lipstick mark he pretended to be annoyed by but secretly loved. She had a client meeting across town to discuss a major project, a community garden space for a rehabilitated urban area. The call came at 2:17 p.m. Ethan would later remember staring at the clock on his office wall, feeling time freeze as the hospital administrator spoke words that shattered his world. Hydroplaning, head-on collision, critical condition. The next 72 hours blurred into a nightmare of hospital corridors, hushed medical terms, and the persistent beeping of machines keeping Olivia alive. Spinal cord damage, extensive surgeries, uncertain prognosis. When Olivia finally opened her eyes 5 days later, Ethan wept with relief. But the neurosurgeon's words afterwards were devastating, permanent damage to the T12 vertebra. Olivia would likely never walk again. "Nothing changes," Ethan whispered to her that night, holding her hand as she drifted in and out of medication-induced sleep. "I'm still here. We're still us." The months that followed tested those words. Their dream home now required extensive modifications, widened doorways, a wheelchair ramp replacing their charming porch steps, grab bars in the bathroom. Ethan took a leave of absence from work to help Olivia through the initial rehabilitation. Her determination amazed everyone. Despite excruciating pain and the psychological weight of her new reality, Olivia approached physical therapy with the same creative problem-solving she brought to her designs. Small victories became cause for celebration, sitting up unassisted, transferring to her wheelchair, learning to navigate their modified home. But as autumn turned to winter, subtle changes appeared in their relationship. Ethan's patience began fraying at the edges. The constant role of caregiver left him exhausted. When his firm called offering a modified schedule if he'd return, he accepted without discussing it with Olivia first. "You need space to heal," he explained when she questioned his decision. "And we need the income." Neither mentioned the growing silence between them or how Ethan had taken to sleeping in the guest room, claiming Olivia needed uninterrupted rest. Neither spoke of how his promises made in the rain seemed to be washing away, one difficult day at a time. Shadows of temptation. Meridian Engineering welcomed Ethan back with understanding and a project that would keep him close to home. The company was designing a new medical rehabilitation center, and his personal experience made him the perfect lead. The irony wasn't lost on him. Designing a facility similar to where Olivia spent her days struggling through therapy. During the initial planning meeting, Ethan met Rebecca Hartwell, the project's client liaison. With copper-red hair and an infectious laugh, Rebecca represented the investment group funding the center. Her confident handshake and direct eye contact left an impression that lingered long after the meeting ended. "You seem to have personal insight into rehabilitation spaces," Rebecca noted as they reviewed preliminary layouts. "It shows in your attention to detail." Ethan hesitated before sharing. "My wife, she was in an accident. She's actually in rehabilitation now." Rebecca's expression softened with genuine concern. "That must be incredibly difficult for both of you." Something about her understanding tone opened a door Ethan hadn't realized was locked. Over coffee after the meeting, words spilled out. His fears, frustrations, and the crushing weight of guilt that accompanied his growing resentment. "I love her," he confessed, staring into his cup. "But sometimes I feel like I'm drowning." "Caregiver burnout is real," Rebecca replied. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Ethan." Those words echoed in his mind during the silent drive home, where he found Olivia struggling to prepare dinner from her wheelchair. A pot of water had spilled across the stovetop. Frustration was etched on her face. "I've got it," he said, more sharply than intended. "You should have waited for me." "I can't wait for you for everything," Olivia replied, voice tight with emotion. "I need to learn independence." "Independence doesn't mean being reckless," he snapped, immediately regretting his tone. That night, their conversation was minimal, focused only on medication schedules and tomorrow's appointments. The wall between them grew taller. As winter deepened, Ethan found himself volunteering for additional meetings on the rehabilitation center project, meetings where Rebecca would be present. Her company offered respite from the heaviness at home. Their professional relationship evolved into friendship through late work sessions and occasional lunches. Rebecca listened without judgment when he shared his struggles. Unlike friends who offered only platitudes about strength and patience, she acknowledged the complexity of his situation. She saw his pain without making him feel guilty for it. "You're allowed to have your own feelings," she told him one evening as they reviewed blueprints. "Having needs doesn't make you a bad person." Meanwhile, Olivia fought her own battles. Her once vibrant career had been put on indefinite hold. Former colleagues visited less frequently as weeks stretched into months. Though she never voiced it to Ethan, she noticed his growing detachment, the way his eyes no longer fully met hers, how his touch had become clinical rather than affectionate. During a particularly difficult therapy session, Olivia broke down. "I feel like I'm losing him," she confided to her physical therapist, Daniela. "He's slipping away, and I don't know how to hold on when I can barely hold myself together." Daniela, who had worked with countless couples facing similar challenges, squeezed Olivia's hand. "Focus on your recovery first. You can't control his choices." Those words proved prophetic. That same afternoon, Ethan and Rebecca found themselves alone in the project site trailer during a sudden snowstorm. As wind howled outside, the professional boundary between them blurred. A consoling touch became an embrace. An embrace led to a kiss neither had planned, but both had contemplated. Ethan pulled away first, shame flooding through him. "I can't, Olivia." "I know," Rebecca whispered. "But maybe you need to consider what's best for both of you. Sometimes love means letting go." The drive home that evening was torturous. Snow fell in thick curtains as Ethan wrestled with what had happened. He had crossed a line he'd never imagined himself capable of crossing. Yet beneath the guilt lay a terrible truth he wasn't ready to face. In Rebecca's arms, he'd felt a freedom he'd been craving. At home, he found Olivia asleep in her wheelchair, a half-finished landscape design on her tablet. Even in adversity, She was fighting to reclaim pieces of herself. He gently transferred her to bed, a task that had become routine. As he tucked the blanket around her, she stirred. "You're late," she murmured sleepily. "The storm," he replied, the partial truth bitter on his tongue. "Go back to sleep." As February turned to March, Ethan found himself living a divided life. At home, he performed his duties as caregiver with increasing mechanical precision. At work, stolen moments with Rebecca multiplied, each rationalized as a necessary escape valve. "She deserves better than half of me," he told Rebecca during one of their clandestine meetings. "Everyone deserves wholeness," she replied. "Even you." The Rehabilitation Center project neared completion, its timeline matching the unraveling of Ethan's marriage. What began as emotional infidelity evolved into a full relationship conducted in shadows. Each deception made the next easier, creating a spiral from which Ethan couldn't, or wouldn't, escape. When Olivia confronted him about his increasing absences and emotional distance, he deflected with excuses about work pressure. But in quiet moments alone, he began envisioning a different future, one with Rebecca, unburdened by caregiving responsibilities and unspoken resentments. The decision crystallized one rainy evening, eerily similar to the night he'd once proposed to Olivia. Standing under the shelter of the completed rehabilitation center's entrance, Rebecca made a suggestion that changed everything. "My firm is opening an office in Portland," she said. "They need an engineering consultant. It could be a fresh start for both of us." Ethan stared into the rain, thinking of promises made and about to be broken. "When?" he asked simply. "2 weeks," she replied. "Not much time, I know. Not much time to dismantle a life. Not much time to justify betrayal. I'll be ready," he said. The fracturing. The manila envelope sat on the kitchen table between them, its contents already creating an invisible wall higher than any they'd faced before. Olivia stared at it, her fingers gripping the armrests of her wheelchair until her knuckles whitened. "Separation papers," Ethan said, his voice clinically detached. "My lawyer says it's the cleanest way forward. 4 years of marriage reduced to legal terminology and property divisions." Outside, April rain tapped against windows that had once framed their shared dreams. "When?" Olivia asked, the single word containing multitudes. "I've accepted a position in Portland. I leave next Friday." Ethan couldn't meet her eyes. Rebecca's. Firm needs. Rebecca. The name hung between them. Not a question, but a confirmation of suspicions Olivia had harbored for months. Ethan's silence provided the answer she dreaded. All those late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden distance. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. "How long?" Her voice remained steady, surprising even herself. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Since January, it wasn't planned, it just happened." Olivia's laugh was hollow. "Things don't just happen, Ethan. You make choices. You chose her while I was fighting to rebuild our life." The truth of her words hit him like physical blows, but self-preservation had become his primary instinct. "I can't be what you need anymore." "What I needed was my husband," Olivia replied. "The man who promised through every storm. Or was that conditional on me remaining perfectly healthy?" Her words stripped away his carefully constructed justifications. Beneath his rehearsed speech about compatibility and changed circumstances lay the ugly truth. He was abandoning her because her disability had become inconvenient to his vision of life. "I'll continue supporting you financially," he offered, as if money could patch the chasm he was creating. "The house will remain yours. My lawyer suggested—" "Stop," Olivia interrupted. Just stop talking about your lawyer like this is a business transaction. This is our life, Ethan. The life we built together. Silence stretched between them, filled with the ghosts of shared memories and shattered promises. You should know, Ethan finally said. We're getting married. In June. The words landed like the final blow. Not only was he leaving, he'd already planned his next chapter while Olivia was still struggling through the current one. Congratulations, she whispered, surprising him with her composure. I hope she never needs you the way I did. The week that followed passed in a blur of logistics and avoidance. Ethan packed his essentials, arranging for the rest to be shipped later. They navigated the shared space like strangers, carefully timing their routines to minimize interaction. On his final night in their home, Ethan found Olivia in what had once been their bedroom, sorting through photographs. Need help? He offered, awkwardly. I'm separating them, she explained. Yours and mine, like everything else. He nodded, noticing how she'd rearranged the room to accommodate her wheelchair better, improvements made without his assistance. A small reminder that perhaps she didn't need him as much as he'd convinced himself. Olivia, don't say you're sorry, she interrupted. We both know you're not. You're relieved. The truth of her assessment silenced him. Morning came with finality. Ethan's SUV stood packed in the driveway as he made one last sweep through the house. In the kitchen, he found an envelope with his name written in Olivia's distinctive handwriting. Inside was their wedding photo, torn precisely down the middle. Portland welcomed Ethan with opportunity and novelty. Rebecca's downtown apartment offered spectacular views of the city and Mount Hood beyond. Her life, their new life together, moved at an exhilarating pace. Networking events, gallery openings, weekend excursions to the coast, no medical appointments, no wheelchair ramps, no reminders of obligations or guilt. To new beginnings, Rebecca toasted on their first night in their shared home. Her smile, confident and untroubled, reflected the future he'd chosen. Ethan's transition to Portland's professional scene proved seamless. Rebecca's connections opened doors at prestigious firms, and his experience with the rehabilitation center became his calling card. Within a month, he'd secured a position with a salary exceeding his expectations. Their June wedding was an intimate affair at a vineyard in Willamette Valley. As Ethan recited vows promising forever to Rebecca, a voice in his mind whispered reminders of similar promises made and broken. He silenced it with champagne and the distraction of celebration. Back in their former hometown, the divorce proceedings moved forward. Ethan's lawyer handled most details, requiring minimal direct communication. With Olivia, the distance, both physical and emotional, made it easier to compartmentalize his previous life. Occasionally, mutual friends provided unsolicited updates. Olivia had sold their house. She was focusing on her recovery. She'd reconnected with former colleagues. Each piece of information was delivered with subtle accusation, which Ethan deflected with practiced responses about mutual growth and different paths. By August, the divorce was finalized. Ethan marked the occasion by purchasing a sports car he'd always wanted, but had deemed impractical during his marriage. Rebecca applauded the decision, calling it symbolic of his newfound freedom. Their life together developed a comfortable rhythm. Rebecca's ambition matched his own, creating a partnership based on shared goals and achievements. They discussed future plans, a larger home, eventual children, career advancements. On paper, everything was perfect, yet in quiet moments, unexpected things triggered memories of his former life. The scent of gardenia, Olivia's favorite flower, a specific shade of blue that matched her eyes, the sound of rain against windows. Each brought momentary discomfort before he pushed the thoughts away. 4 months into their marriage, Rebecca suggested hosting a dinner party for her colleagues and clients. It's time to solidify our position, she explained. reviewing potential guest lists with the same precision she applied to professional presentations. Connections are currency in this business. The evening arrived with meticulous planning. Their apartment transformed into a showcase of their successful partnership. As Ethan played the role of charming host, he caught glimpses of a side of Rebecca he hadn't fully acknowledged before. Her calculated networking, the subtle status comparisons, the performance aspect of their relationship. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Rebecca reviewed the evening's wins, as she termed them. "Martin practically offered you a consulting position on the spot," she noted with satisfaction. "And did you notice Caroline's expression when she saw our place? Priceless." "Is that why we invited them?" Ethan asked. "To make them envious?" Rebecca's laugh tinkled like ice in crystal. "Darling, that's how the game is played. We display our success to create more success." Something about her words unsettled him, though he couldn't articulate why. He fell asleep wondering when exactly life had become a competition rather than a journey. As autumn painted Portland in brilliant colors, Ethan received news that the rehabilitation center he'd helped design had won a prestigious architectural award. The irony wasn't lost on him. His greatest professional achievement born from his greatest personal failure. The notification came with a digital copy of the award ceremony program. Scrolling through it, a familiar name stopped his breath. Olivia James, consulting landscape architect, special recognition for accessible therapeutic gardens. She had contributed to the project, his project, without his knowledge, the foundation. He'd built his new life upon shifted slightly, creating the first hairline fracture in what had seemed solid ground. Veils lifted. The winter rain in Portland fell differently than back home. Colder, more relentless. Ethan stood at the panoramic window of their 14th-floor apartment, watching droplets race down the glass, while Rebecca's voice created a different kind of storm behind him. "You've been distracted for weeks," she said, her tone sharp with accusation. "The Westlake presentation was a disaster." Ethan turned to face her. 6 months into their marriage, he was becoming familiar with this version of Rebecca. The one who emerged when expectations weren't met, when the carefully curated image of their perfect life showed cracks. "It wasn't a disaster," he countered. "We didn't get the contract, but nothing. We needed that contract." Rebecca paced the sleek hardwood floor, heels clicking like metronome beats. "Do you know what this looks like for me? I vouched for you." "You vouched for me?" The phrasing caught his attention. "I'm your husband, not your protege." Rebecca's laugh held no warmth. "Don't be naive. Everything in this world is transactional. Our marriage, your career here, it all works when we both deliver value." The words hung in the air between them, revealing a perspective Ethan hadn't fully recognized until now. He thought back to their early conversations, how she'd listened to his frustrations about caregiving, how she'd offered understanding when he felt most alone. Had that been strategy rather than compassion? "Is that how you see our relationship?" he asked quietly. "As a transaction?" Rebecca softened, approaching to straighten his tie in a gesture that once felt affectionate, but now seemed performative. "I see it as a partnership with mutual benefits. That's more honest than pretending it's all about romantic notions, don't you think?" Before he could respond, her phone chimed with a calendar alert. "The Hendersons' charity gala," she reminded him. "We need to leave in 20 minutes. Wear the blue tie instead. It photographs better." As they moved through the evening's choreographed social interactions, Ethan observed Rebecca with new awareness. Each laugh, each touch on an influential person's arm, each seemingly spontaneous anecdote, all calculated for maximum impact. She worked the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, and he realized his role was merely to play his assigned part. Later that week, while Rebecca attended, A conference in Seattle, Ethan found himself alone in their apartment, the silence both welcome and oppressive. On impulse, he searched online for news about the rehabilitation center back home. A recent article appeared featuring patient success stories. The accompanying photo showed the therapeutic garden in full bloom, Olivia's design. In the corner of the image, he glimpsed a figure in a wheelchair, partially obscured but unmistakable. His finger hovered over his phone, contemplating actions he'd avoided for nearly a year. After a moment's hesitation, he texted their mutual friend Thomas, "How is she?" The response came hours later, after midnight. "Better without you." The blunt assessment stung with its truth. Sleep eluded him that night, his mind replaying decisions that had led him here, to this beautiful, empty apartment, and a marriage that increasingly felt like a business arrangement. Morning brought an unexpected email from his former colleague at Meridian Engineering. The message was professional, inquiring if Ethan would consider consulting on a new project. The final line, however, was personal. "Saw Olivia last week. She's teaching a workshop on accessible design at the community college. Incredible woman." Something shifted inside Ethan, a mixture of pride and regret that complicated his already unsettled emotions. When Rebecca returned from Seattle, she brought news of her own. "They've offered me the directorship in Chicago," she announced triumphantly. "Twice the salary, full relocation package, and equity partnership." Ethan blinked, processing the information. "Chicago? When did this opportunity arise?" Rebecca waved dismissively. "I've been in discussions for months. It's been my goal since before we moved to Portland. Before we—" He stopped, realization dawning. "You never planned to stay here long term." "Of course not. Portland was always a stepping stone." She studied his expression. "Don't look so shocked, Ethan. We go where the opportunities are. That was our agreement." "I don't recall agreeing to Chicago," he said quietly. Rebecca's smile tightened. "We're a package deal. My career advancement benefits us both." The conversation ended there, but something fundamental had changed. The following weeks brought increasing tension as Ethan questioned aspects of their relationship he'd previously accepted without examination. His epiphany came during an ordinary moment. While searching for tax documents in Rebecca's home office, he discovered a folder labeled Ethan's Strategy. Inside were meticulous notes dating back to their first meeting, observations about his vulnerabilities, recommendations for gaining his trust, even a timeline projecting their relationship milestones. The final page contained a cost-benefit analysis of their marriage, his name listed under assets, with notations about his professional connections and potential earning capacity. His stomach churned as pieces fell into place. The consoling words when he was at his lowest, the job opportunity that appeared just when he was most vulnerable, the persistent undermining of his marriage to Olivia. None of it had been coincidence. When confronted, Rebecca showed neither shame nor regret. "Business and pleasure aren't separate spheres," she explained with clinical detachment. "I saw potential in you, and I invested accordingly." "You manipulated me," Ethan said, voice hollow with disbelief. "I recognized an opportunity," she corrected. "You were already looking for an exit. I simply provided a convenient door." The truth of her assessment left him speechless. He had been complicit in his own deception, eager to escape responsibilities that felt too heavy, too permanent. That night, Ethan checked into a hotel, needing space to think. From his temporary sanctuary, he finally did what he'd avoided for months. He researched Olivia's progress. Online, he found evidence of her resilience. Her professional website showcased new projects specializing in therapeutic landscape design. A local news article featured her advocacy work for accessibility in public spaces. A professional photograph showed her smiling alongside colleagues at a design conference, her wheelchair visible, but not the focus. She had rebuilt her life without. him perhaps better than before. Meanwhile, his own existence felt increasingly hollow. The prestigious job, the luxury apartment, the influential social circle, all of it tainted by the realization that he'd traded substance for appearance, commitment for convenience. When he returned to the apartment 3 days later, Rebecca greeted him with unexpected news. "The Chicago position wants me there by the end of the month," she said. "I've already started packing." Ethan nodded slowly. "I'm not going." Rebecca's expression revealed neither surprise nor disappointment. "I suspected as much." She handed him a document. "Separation agreement. My lawyer drafted it yesterday." Parallel to his own actions with Olivia wasn't lost on him. That was efficient. "Unlike you, I don't waste time on sentimentality," Rebecca replied. "The apartment lease is in my name. You have 2 weeks." Just like that, the foundation of his new life collapsed completely. Within days, Rebecca had efficiently extracted herself from their marriage, approaching it with the same strategic precision she applied to business acquisitions and disposals. As he packed his belongings, fewer than he'd expected after nearly a year of marriage, Ethan confronted the consequences of choices made in weakness rather than integrity. He had abandoned someone who loved him for someone who saw him as an asset to be acquired and, ultimately, liquidated when more profitable opportunities arose. The karmic symmetry was both painful and illuminating. With nowhere specific to go, Ethan checked into an extended-stay hotel and began the process of rebuilding. His professional reputation remained intact, generating consulting offers that would sustain him financially, but the deeper questions of where to go and how to live remained unanswered. One evening, scrolling through emails, he noticed a newsletter from the Rehabilitation Center. Featured prominently was an announcement about an upcoming symposium on integrated design for accessibility. The keynote speaker, Olivia James. Without overthinking, he registered to attend. The symposium was scheduled for April. Almost exactly 1 year since he'd walked away from his marriage, his promises, and the woman who had loved him despite his flaws. Whether seeking closure or forgiveness, Ethan knew he needed to face the consequences of his betrayal directly. What he didn't anticipate was how that confrontation would reshape his understanding of both loss and redemption. Full circle. April brought Ethan back to his hometown for the Rehabilitation Center's Design Symposium. Watching from the back of the auditorium as Olivia delivered her keynote speech, he was struck by her transformation. She navigated her wheelchair with confidence, her presentation on accessible design drawing a standing ovation. After the talk, Thomas, their mutual friend, approached him. "She spotted you the moment you walked in." Before Ethan could respond, Olivia wheeled toward them, accompanied by a tall man with kind eyes. "Ethan, this is David Harrison. He's a specialist at the center." The way David looked at Olivia, with admiration and love, was painfully familiar to Ethan. After introductions, Olivia asked to speak with Ethan privately. "I saw your name on the registration list," she explained. "I heard about Portland. I'm sorry it didn't work out." Her forgiveness, offered without request, humbled him. "You seem happy," he observed. "I am. Not despite everything that happened, but because of it." She glanced toward David. "We're getting married in June." Ethan felt genuine happiness for her. "You deserve that kind of love, Olivia. You always did." "Everyone does," she replied simply, "including you." When he asked how she rebuilt her life, she answered thoughtfully. "When you left, I had 2 choices. Remain broken, or use those broken pieces to create something new. The hardest part wasn't physical rehabilitation. It was learning to value myself when the person who promised to love me couldn't see that value anymore." They parted with a handshake that felt like both closure and beginning. 2 weeks later, Ethan volunteered at a community center adapting homes for people with mobility challenges. He'd taken a consulting position on Olivia's community garden project, understanding they would interact professionally. In June, he stood at the back of a small gathering in the therapeutic garden as Olivia and David exchanged vows. After the ceremony, David approached him. "When I first met her, she was struggling with both physical pain and heartbreak," David said without accusation. "What impressed me was her determination to not let betrayal define her capacity to trust." As Ethan drove away, he felt something unexpected, not sharp regret, but quiet hope. Understanding that karma's purpose isn't punishment but balance, teaching through consequence what couldn't be learned through wisdom. His future remained unwritten, but for the first time since leaving Olivia, he faced it with neither fear nor expectation, only the humble determination to build something meaningful from the broken pieces of his past.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.